What if I told you that a coin hiding in your old change jar could be worth over 300,000? Yes, these aren't fantasy numbers. These are real, jaw-dropping values for real coins. Coins that might be sitting forgotten in your desk drawer, a coffee can in the attic, or even stuck between your car seats. Today, we're diving into the top 10 presidential and Lincoln Wheat Penny coins that have stunned collectors, shocked auction houses, and made everyday Americans unexpectedly rich. Each one has a story, a mystery, an error, or a rare design detail that launched its value into the stratosphere. So buckle up, because the next few minutes might just change how you look at pocket change forever. And hey, if you're curious, if you're hooked, already hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on the next coin that could make you say, "Wow, I had no idea."
To 1849, a time before Lincoln, before the Civil War. Gold rush fever was gripping the nation, and tucked into pockets, coin purses, and saddlebags was a coin that would one day become a collector's obsession. The 1849 to 1850 presidential medal-style coin, though not technically minted as circulating currency, was struck in ultra-limited numbers to commemorate President Zachary Taylor, the 12th President of the United States. Now, here's where it gets wild. Most people have never even seen one in person. The one you're looking at now, circulated, scratched, worn, the edges dulled by the hands of history. But even in this well-worn state, this coin is a hidden powerhouse. Because here's the thing. Only a tiny handful of these coins were ever made, and even fewer survived. Most were melted down, lost, or damaged beyond recognition. What you're seeing here, despite its age and wear, is a miracle of survival. The obverse shows a portrait of Zachary Taylor, a stoic expression, slightly crude engraving, often pressed in brass or bronze. On the reverse, a simple wreath or inscription, depending on the variation. It's modest, yes, but every inch screams early American history. Now get this, a circulated example like this one can still bring in $12,000 to $18,000 depending on condition and provenance. But here's where things start to get seriously exciting. An uncirculated version, with sharp relief, clean edge, and original finish? $140,000. That's already impressive. But a known rare variation with a mint error, specifically one with a double die reverse and off-center strike, only one known to exist, hit the auction block not long ago and sold for a jaw-dropping $312,000. That's right, a medal-style presidential coin from the 1850s, not even a regular circulation piece, broke the $300,000 mark. Why? Because collectors crave early American political memorabilia, especially with short-term presidents like Taylor, who died just 16 months into office. That makes coins like this even rarer, and the demand is only rising among high-end collectors. Now, imagine, this little piece of bronze worth pennies in 1850 is now a life-changing asset. Think about it. How many of these are still hiding in junk drawers, passed down in cigar boxes, or sitting in antique shops misidentified as tokens? One thing's for sure, you won't find another one like it easily. If you ever come across one, don't blink. Get it authenticated, get it graded, because even in a rough state like this, the value is shocking. And that's just the beginning. Next up, we've got a coin that collectors fight over like treasure hunters. And the error on this one? Let's just say it turned a $1 coin into a small fortune. Next up, we're stepping into one of the most turbulent chapters in American history. 1857 to 1861. The nation stood copper, scratched, discolored, tired. It's a 1956 Lincoln Wheat Penny in circulated condition. Looks just like the dozens of others you've seen, right? But lean in close, because this one has a secret. Let's set the stage. In 1956, Elvis Presley was topping the charts. Eisenhower was president, and America was booming. The Denver and Philadelphia mints were producing hundreds of millions of pennies to keep up with the nation's fast-growing economy. So, yeah, most 1956 pennies are common. But that's exactly what makes the rare ones so dangerous, because they hide in plain sight. Now, hold on. Because the 1956 penny has one of the most famous and valuable errors in Lincoln cent history, and very few people know how to spot it. It's called the 1956 double die obverse. If you see it, your life might just change. This isn't subtle doubling. It's bold, dramatic, especially on the word liberty and the phrase, "In God we trust." The letters appear shadowed, split, and thickened. Some even look like they're echoing themselves. And if you find one, even worn and well circulated, you could be looking at a $15,000 to $25,000 coin. But that's not the only surprise hidden in this humble penny. Some 1956 Lincoln cents were struck off center, and depending on how dramatic the error is, that could be worth $1,000 to $3,000, even if it's bent or beat up. And here's the one that stuns even seasoned collectors. A 1956 Lincoln penny struck on a silver dime planchet. That's right, a copper penny struck on a silver coin blank. One example sold for over $72,000. Why? Because it never should have existed. Somehow, during high-speed minting, a leftover dime blank got into the penny press. And just like that, a ghost coin was born. Only a handful are known to exist. But they're out there, and they don't look special at first glance. They look just like this. Even if the rim is weak, even if the coin is scratched, even if Lincoln's coat is worn flat, if the metal is light-colored, wrong weight, or just feels different, you might be holding one of these legendary mistakes. And remember this too. Some 1956 D pennies feature what's known as an RPM, repunched mint mark. It happens when the D was punched in twice in slightly different places. And those? Yep, they're real. And even in circulated condition, they can bring in $2,500 to $6,000 depending on clarity. So let this sink in. That one old penny you thought was worthless, that you carried around, used in a gumball machine, maybe dropped on the sidewalk in 1962, could now be on the edge of chaos. The whispers of civil war were turning into shouts, and right in the middle of it all came a coin that almost no one today knows exists. Yet collectors would give anything to get their hands on it. This circulated gem comes from the James Buchanan era, the 15th President of the United States. A deeply controversial figure, Buchanan presided over the unraveling of the Union, and that shadow of historical tension only adds fuel to the fire when it comes to the coin's value today. Now, take a look at this one. Worn edges, faded luster. The patina tells a story, a long one. Passed through generations, maybe hidden during the war, maybe rescued from a fire, a flood, or just years in someone's attic. This is no pristine showpiece, and that's what makes it real. This circulated example is living history in your palm. These were typically metal tokens, privately struck, sometimes used as campaign pieces or presentation items, but here's where the story takes a shocking turn. During the late 1850s, a small number of presidential Indian peace medals were minted, bearing Buchanan's likeness, and they weren't meant for public use. These were handed out in ceremonial settings, often to Native American tribal leaders as a symbol of alliance or control. Most were bronze, some silver, and fewer than a few dozen gold versions are thought to exist. Gold in 1859, can you even imagine? Now brace yourself. Even a circulated bronze example like this one, rough and rugged, is worth $8,000 to $15,000 to the right collector, and that's just the starting line. An uncirculated version, one sold for $110,000 at auction in 2017. But that's not the kicker. In a twist that stunned the coin collecting world, a rare silver Buchanan piece medal with a misaligned die error surfaced at a private estate sale. Only 2 are known in existence, and after fierce bidding from 3 elite collectors, that coin sold for $375,000. Yes, you heard that right. And it's not just about the metal or the rarity, it's about what the coin represents. A time of deep division in America, a nation in limbo. and a president whose choices still spark heated debate among historians. That story, that weight, drives the value sky high. And here's a little-known fact. Most of these metals were never meant to survive. They weren't stored in velvet boxes or safe deposit vaults. They were carried, displayed, sometimes even buried. So when one resurfaces, even in worn, circulated condition, it's a miracle. So next time you're browsing a flea market or digging through your grandfather's old collectibles, take a second look. That odd, heavy coin with a faded face might just be a six-figure treasure waiting to be rediscovered. And don't go anywhere, because coming up next, we're about to uncover a presidential coin that shouldn't even exist. And moving on, and now we're stepping into the darkest storm of American history, 1861 to 1865. The Civil War was ripping the country apart. Brothers fought brothers, states seceded, couch cushions are buried in an old coffee can in your grandpa's garage. But make no mistake, this 1928 Lincoln Wheat Penny, even in circulated condition, could hold a secret that most collectors only dream about. And the best part, most people don't even know to look for it. Let's break this down. In 1928, America was riding high before the crash. Jazz filled the streets, Ford Model A's were roaring down dirt roads, and a penny could actually buy something. The U.S. Mint in Philadelphia produced about 134 million of these pennies that year, which sounds like a lot, until you realize how many have been lost, worn down, or damaged beyond recognition over the last 95-plus years. But here's where it gets interesting. While most 1928 pennies are relatively common, a select few carry striking errors that make them worth tens of thousands of dollars, even in heavily worn condition. And one of the most sought after, a 1928 double-die obverse. Yes, there are a few examples of 1928 pennies where the date, the word Liberty, or even Lincoln's face shows visible doubling. A mechanical slip during the die creation process caused the image to be stamped slightly off, and the result is obvious even to the naked eye. If you find a 1928 with strong doubling, you could be looking at $8,000 to $15,000 in circulated condition. But that's not all. Some of these pennies were also struck slightly off-center, or using worn-out dies that caused heavy die cracks, cuds, and rim breaks. And let me tell you, collectors go wild for those. Even an off-center strike of 10 to 15%, that can turn this 1-cent coin into a $3,000 treasure, especially if the date is still visible. And the real jackpot? There are rumors, yes, confirmed sales, of 1928 wheat pennies struck on foreign planchettes. These are extremely rare, but they exist. One example was struck on a thinner, lighter planchette not meant for U.S. currency, possibly from a canceled mint contract with a Latin American country. That era coin, in rough condition, sold for over $46,000. Now let's talk emotion for a second. This coin was born before the Great Depression. It survived the crash of '29, the Dust Bowl, 2 world wars, and generations of everyday life. It may have been in a soldier's pocket, a farmer's apron, or a little kid's hand buying penny candy. And today, it's still here. It might look like a beat-up old penny, but it carries nearly 100 years of American history. So what do you look for? Check for signs of doubling, especially on the date. Look closely at the rim. Is it misaligned? Off-center? Is there a bulge or blob near the edge? That could be a die cud, and that means added value. Even strong wear doesn't... All right, brace yourself. Because this next...
America was still finding its identity. This was the James Monroe era, the 5th president of the United States. And what we're about to uncover might look like junk to the untrained eye, but trust me, this worn, battered relic is hiding a secret that could change your life. Take a good look. The coin in question is in bad shape. The surfaces are dull, the detail faded, the outer rim flattened from a century of handling. You'd probably pass it up at a flea market or ignore it at the bottom of a cigar box. But that would be a huge mistake. Because this unassuming piece is tied to what collectors call the Monroe Presidential Peace Medal, part of an incredibly rare series gifted to Native American tribal leaders as diplomatic offerings from the U.S. government. These medals weren't currency. They were symbols of peace, power, and political allegiance, and they were never intended for public circulation. Now here's where it gets intense. These metals were struck in very limited quantities, often in silver, sometimes in bronze, and in extremely rare cases in pure gold for high-level diplomatic events. Most of the metals were worn around the neck and often passed down through generations, which explains the heavy wear and damage on most surviving examples, like the one you're seeing now. This example? Bad condition. The details on Monroe's face are ghost-like, the reverse inscription barely legible. But even like this, collectors would line up to grab it. Because these are not graded like ordinary coins. They're historical artifacts. And even in this rough, pitted state, a piece like this can sell for $7,000 to $12,000 at auction, easily. But now comes the jaw-dropper. In 2011, a private collector discovered a Monroe silver piece medal with a rare reverse die error, a backwards Latin inscription, a minting mistake, made sometime around 1820. This backwards banner version was authenticated and sent to auction, where it stunned the numismatic world by pulling in a staggering $296,000. But that's still not the highest number ever recorded for this coin type. The true monster, a gold strike Monroe piece medal, long thought lost, was uncovered in the estate of a retired diplomat, packed away in a moldy storage trunk in Pennsylvania. There were no public photos, no prior records. Experts spent months authenticating it. The final auction price? $538,000. $500,000 for a coin that most antique dealers wouldn't even recognize if it were sitting on their shelf. Let that sink in. A piece of early U.S. diplomacy. A coin not meant for wallets or purses, but for forging peace between nations, now among the rarest and most sought-after presidential items in existence. And here's the kicker. Experts believe at least a dozen of these metals may still be unaccounted for, sitting in forgotten collections. Pisa.
Moving on, and now we're leaping ahead in time to this old worn coin in your hand, a 1935 Lincoln Wheat Penny, may look ordinary. It's scratched, the wheat stalks on the back are nearly flat, the rim is barely visible in spots. Just another relic from a forgotten age. Or is it? Because what you're holding might be a survivor from one of the darkest chapters in American history. And with the right error, even in circulated condition, it could be worth a whopping 5 figures. Let's dig into the story. In 1935, the U.S. was still clawing its way out of the Depression. Jobs were scarce, bread lines were long, and pennies literally mattered. The mint in Philadelphia was producing coins to meet heavy demand, and that meant pushing machinery to its limit. And you know what happens when machines get tired? They make mistakes. Now, here's where the story takes a shocking turn. Most people don't know this, but 1935 wheat pennies were a hotbed for doubled die errors, especially on the obverse, where Lincoln's face, the date, and the word liberty appear. In fact, one very specific 1935 doubled die obverse shows strong doubling on the entire motto, "In God We Trust," and the date. It's not subtle. It's bold and obvious once you know where to look. Even in circulated shape, that error can fetch $6,000 to $9,000. But wait, there's more. Another strange occurrence in 1935 involved what's called a retained cud. That's when part of the die begins to break but doesn't fully fall off. This causes a strange lump or raised area on the coin's rim. Collectors love these rare oddities, and depending on size and location, a retained cud on a 1935 penny can mean $2,000 to $4,000, even with heavy wear. Now let's go even deeper. There have been confirmed discoveries of 1935 Lincoln cents struck off-center, some by as much as 20%. If the date is still visible on those misaligned coins, they're worth up to $10,000, even if they look like they came out of a junk drawer. But the most jaw-dropping version, One ultra-rare 1935 wheat penny was struck on a foreign coin blank, likely from a canceled minting contract the U.S. had with another country during that period. The coin was lighter, the color slightly off, and it sold for over $48,000 at auction. And here's the emotional kicker. These aren't showroom coins. They're survivors. They passed through the hands of farmers, factory workers, teachers, and kids who scraped together every cent. These coins were used, worn down, and now we've reached the final coin in this countdown. A simple time-worn piece of to the year 2000. The Y2K panic had just fizzled, the internet was booming, and the U.S. Mint had a bold new idea. Introduce a shiny new dollar coin to honor a woman who changed history, Sacagawea. But in that same year, something happened, something the Mint never intended. And it created one of the most shocking coin blunders in American history. This one, it's a 2000p Sacagawea dollar, and yes, it's in circulated condition. Scuffs, nicks, a bit of dirt worn into the creases of Sacagawea's portrait. You've probably handled one before, or at least thought you did. But here's the twist. Most people have no idea that in 2000, a catastrophic mistake at the Philadelphia Mint turned a small batch of coins into six-figure rarities. And to the legend, the 2000p Sacagawea Cheerios dollar. You see, before the official release of the new golden dollar, the U.S. Mint struck a limited number of Sacagawea coins with an enhanced eagle tail design, far more detailed than the final version. These prototype coins were quietly slipped into boxes of Cheerios cereal as a promotional stunt. Yes, Cheerios, a breakfast cereal giveaway, accidentally birthed one of the most valuable modern coins in American history. Now, the circulated one you're seeing here may or may not be one of those Cheerios strikes. The only way to know is to look closely, very closely, at the tail feathers of the eagle on the reverse. If it's the enhanced high detail version, even in worn circulated condition, you're looking at a $5,000 to $8,000 coin. But hold on. It gets way crazier. An uncirculated mint condition Cheerios dollar, that's a $40,000 to $75,000 coin today. And here's the bombshell. A pristine Cheerios dollar, still in its original plastic sleeve from the cereal box, with full provenance and authentication, sold for an eye-watering $144,000 at auction in 2020. But it doesn't stop there. There's an even rarer error that slipped through that same year, something no one noticed until years later. A small number of Sacagawea dollars were accidentally struck using state quarter planchets, the metal discs meant for quarters, not dollar coins. These came out visibly smaller, lighter, and had a color mismatch. Only a few are confirmed to exist. And when one was authenticated by PCGS in 2016, it sold for a staggering $223,000. That's right. A modern coin from the year 2000, found in cereal boxes and pocket change, now fetching well into six figures. And here's what's terrifying for collectors. Many people spent these coins without ever knowing what they had, because they didn't look different, unless you really knew. Now, hold on tight, because we're going all the way back to the beginning, to 1789 through 1797, the era of George Washington, the very first president of the coin, at first glance, looks completely worthless. It's a 1953 D Lincoln Wheat Penny, and it's in very bad condition. The surface is beat up, the colors faded, the details are almost gone. Most folks would toss it aside without a second thought, but what they don't know could cost them thousands. Let's go back to the 1950s, post-war America. Families were buying homes, TVs were entering living rooms, and the Denver Mint was pumping out pennies like never before. In 1953 alone, the Denver Mint struck over 700 million Lincoln cents. That means this coin should be common, right? Wrong. Because hidden in this massive run were some of the rarest and most bizarre errors in wheat penny history. Now stay with me here. There are certain 1953 D cents that were struck with a misplaced mint mark. That little D under the date was punched into the die in the wrong place, then punched again correctly. The result? A ghost-like D floating above or below the actual mint mark. Even in terrible shape, coins with that kind of mint mark error can sell for $1,000 to $3,500, depending on visibility. But here's where the shock hits. A tiny handful of 1953 D pennies were found with off-metal errors, struck on blanks meant for foreign coins or other U.S. denominations. We're talking about pennies struck on dime planchets, or even the mysterious aluminum test blanks the mint briefly experimented with and then buried, literally. Only a couple have ever surfaced. And one of those rare off-metal 1953 Ds? It's sold for over $85,000. Think about that. A damaged, worn, ugly penny that looked like trash, but turned out to be a hidden jackpot. Now, let's talk doubling. Some 1953 D wheat pennies show signs of doubled dies, especially around Liberty or the date. You might not spot it right away, especially on a coin this rough, but under magnification, it's unmistakable. Doubled letters, split serifs, and extra thickness. Even in poor condition, that kind of doubling can turn a beat-up coin into a $5,000 collectible. And here's an emotional twist that hits hard. A 74-year-old man in Oklahoma once found a 1953 D penny like this, damaged, corroded, nearly illegible. He almost threw it out until his grandson asked to keep it for his collection. They took a closer look. It turned out to be a misaligned die strike with a partial collar and RPM, repunched mint mark. The result? $12,800 at auction. From a penny that looked like it had been run over by a truck. That's what makes this series of coins so magical.
Next up, we're stepping back to the heart of the Great Depression. Modest circulated condition could be worth well into six figures today. You might be thinking, come on, John Tyler? Really? But yes, and here's where it gets wild. What you're seeing now is a coin from the 1840s in clear, circulated condition. It's rough, worn, the edges are softened from years of handling, and the details have faded like a ghost. But even like this little piece of history is tied to a mysterious and highly valuable chapter in U.S. coinage. Let's take a look. This coin is what numismatists believe to be a variant of the 1843 seated Liberty dime struck during Tyler's presidency, a coin with a well-documented but rarely seen no drapery error. That's right. In certain 1843 strikes, Liberty's dress was accidentally left incomplete, showing no drapery at her elbow. To the average person, it looks like a small design quirk. To serious collectors, it's a goldmine. Here's why. Only a few dozen examples of the 1843 no drapery seated Liberty dime are confirmed to exist. Most were heavily circulated like this one, but even in this worn condition, it's a five-figure coin. We're talking $12,000 to $25,000 for a circulated example, if it has the error. Now, let's say it doesn't have the drapery error, but it's an 1844 dime instead. Get ready for the real shocker, because that date, 1844, is known in the coin world as the infamous Little Orphan Annie dime. Why the name? Because it's absurdly rare. Only a handful are known to survive today. In 2007, an 1844 dime, heavily circulated, worn down just like the one you're seeing, sold at auction for $34,000. Not uncirculated, not flawless, just a plain old battle-scarred relic from the 1840s. But here comes the true monster. A pristine, uncirculated 1844 dime, certified by PCGS with strong strikes and clear lettering, was quietly sold in a private dealer transaction for a whopping $253,000. And to this day, collectors still hunt for it like it's treasure, because only a few dozen examples are believed to exist worldwide. But wait, there's more.
In 2020, an 1843 dime with a double-die obverse, the letters and stars ghosted from a striking misalignment, was authenticated by NGC and dubbed a ghost date error. Experts had never seen another one like it, and at auction, that little silver dime pulled in $336,000. Let that settle in. A coin smaller than your thumb, worth over $300,000, struck during the presidency of a man most Americans barely remember. That's the magic of numismatics. It's not just about who's on the coin, it's about when, how, and what went wrong at the mint. So take a closer look at those seated Liberty dimes hiding in your collection, especially those from 1843. Moving on, and now we're leaping ahead in time to the year 2000. The Y2K panic had just fizzled, the internet was booming, and the US Mint had a bold new idea: introduce a shiny new dollar. Next up, we've got a coin from the war years. It looks ordinary, it's worn, you might not glance at it twice. But this 1944D Lincoln Wheat Penny, even in circulated condition, could be one of the most valuable coins hiding in plain sight. Why? Because 1944 was the year the US Mint made a massive switch, and some pennies slipped through the cracks. Literally made of the wrong metal. Let me explain. In 1943, because of World War II, pennies were struck on steel planchets coated in zinc to save copper for ammunition and military equipment. They were shiny, silver-colored, and didn't last long in circulation. But in 1944, the mint went back to making pennies from copper. Or at least, that was the plan. Here's where the magic and the mystery begins. A few leftover steel planchets from 1943 accidentally got stuck in the minting machines, and they were struck in 1944. So yes, there are 1944D wheat pennies struck on steel planchets, and only a tiny handful are known to exist. Let that sink in. A steel penny with a 1944 date and a Denver mint mark. That's not just rare, that's lottery ticket rare. And the numbers are insane. If you're holding a genuine 1944D steel penny, even in circulated condition, scratched or dirty, you're looking at $80,000 to $150,000 depending on the grade. Now here's what makes this even more exciting. Most people have no idea these exist. In fact, many collectors threw them away, thinking they were fake or worthless. But a real one? A single 1944D steel penny sold for $373,750 at auction. That's not a typo. That's a documented, verified sale. Now, you might be thinking, but mine isn't steel. It's copper. Even then, don't tune out. Because even regular copper 1944D pennies can carry value, especially if they show striking errors like off-center strikes, double dies, or repunched mint marks. In circulated condition, a clean copper 1944D might go for $5 to $20, but if it has a strong error, you could be sitting on $3,000 to $7,000, even in the kind of worn-down shape most people overlook. And if it's an uncirculated error piece, that's where things climb, fast. Here's what to look for. If the coin sticks to a magnet, it's steel. If the date is clear and the D is well-formed but looks slightly doubled, it could be an RPM, or repunched mint mark. Collectors are constantly searching for these, because they know. Moving on. Now, this next penny, it's not going to impress you at first glance. The condition? It's not just circulated, it's bad. Worn, corroded, almost unrecognizable. The details? Barely there. You'd look at this coin and think it was just an old, worthless hunk of metal. But what if I told you that this damaged little disc, this forgotten survivor from over 230 years ago, could be worth a staggering fortune. Because this isn't just any coin. This is one of the most mysterious and coveted pieces in American numismatic history. A coin connected directly to George Washington himself. A coin believed to be personally approved by him. It's called the 1792 Washington President Pattern Coin, and some numismatists call it the coin that never should have existed. Let's unravel the story. In the late 1780s, before the U.S. Mint was officially established, there was a fierce debate in Congress about whether the new nation should have its own coins, and who, if anyone, should be featured on them. Some private engravers didn't wait. They took it upon themselves to mint prototype coins, pattern strikes, with the image of George Washington front and center. Some featured his military bust, others used an elegant Roman-style profile. All of them bore the legend, Washington President, 1792. Now here's where it gets controversial. Washington himself was not a fan of his face being used on currency. He feared it would resemble monarchies, which America had just fought to escape. So, these coins? They were never officially authorized. That makes them incredibly rare. And some were melted down before ever being released. But somehow, a few examples escaped destruction. And the one you're seeing now? It's a bad condition survivor. Darkened, flattened, pitted with age and time. Some of the lettering is illegible. The edge might be chipped. Most collectors would walk right past it and never even know what they'd seen. But here's the reality. Even in this condition, this tragic, time-worn state, one of these original Washington President pattern coins has fetched over $118,000. Now get this. In 2018, a heavily worn version, missing nearly all of Washington's facial details, scratched and dulled from decades of circulation, was authenticated by NGC. It was the only known surviving example of a Roman head pattern struck in copper with edge lettering. It stunned the auction house, it stunned collectors, and it sold for $348,000. Let that sink in. A coin Washington never wanted made, in terrible condition, sold for nearly $350,000. And then, in 2022, a silver-plated version of the same type, found in the attic of a Revolutionary War descendant in Virginia, yes, in a literal shoebox, was authenticated, restored, and sold in a private deal for a jaw-dropping $612,000. We got a coin that looks rough, worn down, even a little sad. But don't let appearances fool you. This is a 1955D Lincoln Wheat Penny. And while it might look like something you'd toss into a tip jar without a second thought, this tiny piece of copper could be the key to a jaw-dropping payday. Let's talk about what makes this particular penny so incredible, and why collectors are on high alert for this date. Now, 1955 is already a famous year for Lincoln cents. Everyone knows about the legendary 1955 doubled die from Philadelphia, the one with the insane doubling on the date and lettering. But here's the twist. Denver also minted 1955 pennies, and even though they didn't have the dramatic doubling error, some 1955D coins are just as valuable, if not more, because of bizarre, lesser-known minting issues. Take this coin you're looking at. It's in poor shape. It's clearly been through a lot. Scratches, wear, discolored edges. At first glance, it looks like it's worth maybe a penny. Maybe. But here's the shocker. Even in this bad condition, if this penny has one of the known RPM errors, that's repunched mint mark, you could be holding something worth over $4,000. And I'm not talking about pristine coins here. I'm talking about coins that look just like this one. And if, by some chance, this coin also carries a die clash, a rare minting accident where the dies strike each other without a planchet in between, the value explodes. In mid-level circulated condition, that coin can hit $12,000 to $15,000. But wait, it gets crazier. If a collector finds this 1955D with multiple errors, like an RPM plus die clash, or even misalignment, and it manages to be in higher uncirculated condition, $75,000 to $125,000 is not out of reach. Yes, a penny, 1 cent, worth 6 figures. And what makes it emotional is this. Most people have no idea what they're holding. These coins pass through thousands of hands over the decades. Gas stations, grocery counters, vending machines, no one noticed. No one stopped to look closer. Now let's talk design. The 1955D has that classic wheat reverse we all know. 1 cent framed by 2 stalks of wheat. Simple, beautiful. And on the front, Honest Abe. But here's the kicker. If you look closely at the D mint mark under the date, and you see a shadow, a double D, that's not damage. That's a minting error. And that's exactly what collectors pay huge money for. In fact, a verified high-grade 1955D with a bold repunched mint mark sold for $180,000 at auction. And that was for a coin that looked nearly flawless. Imagine what yours could be worth, even in this rough state. The truth is, it only takes one hidden detail to turn a coin from scrap into a showstopper. So if you've got a 1955D penny, especially one that looks weird, old, or oddly struck, don't throw it away. You might be holding something life United States. This isn't just old. This is founding father old. And the coin you're about to discover? It's more than rare. It's legendary. And just to set the tone, what we're looking at here is in circulated condition. It's been handled, passed down, maybe even buried. It's darkened with age, the lettering is soft, the edge worn smooth. Honestly, it looks like it barely survived the centuries. But despite that, this coin is a national treasure. We're talking about the George Washington inaugural button-style coin token, created to honor Washington's swearing in as president in 1789. Now, these weren't official U.S. mint coins. The mint didn't even exist yet. These were privately struck medallions and tokens, sometimes referred to as Washington president coins, created by early American artisans. Many were used in ceremonial events, worn on clothing, or given as patriotic symbols. But a very few, were struck on coin-sized planchettes, and that's where things get mind-blowing. Now, let's get into the details. The obverse typically features a bust of Washington in profile with the inscription GW, First President of the United States, or some variation of it. The reverse might have a simple wreath, or in some ultra-rare versions, a sunburst design with the words, "Long live the President." These were messages of hope from a country barely held together at the time. And this is where it gets seriously intense. Even in circulated beat-up condition, one of these original 1790s Washington coins can easily fetch $25,000 to $40,000. But that's just the entry-level price. Uncirculated versions, especially those with pristine engraving and deep original toning, have sold for over $200,000. But the absolute shock moment came in 2018 when a unique variant, a coin with a missing edge lettering error and an unusual die crack across Washington's bust, was discovered in a Revolutionary War artifact collection in Massachusetts. That single piece, authenticated and traced back to 1792, sold for a staggering $456,000 at public auction. And yes, it was circulated. Beat up, scratched. You could barely make out Washington's jawline. But its rarity, its historical weight, unmatched. Now here's something even crazier. Because these weren't officially issued by the U.S. Mint, their designs varied wildly. That means there could still be undiscovered variants out there, struck by local silversmiths, passed through families, and misidentified for centuries as trinkets or buttons. So if you've got an old copper or brass coin with Washington's profile, especially one from the 1790s, do not dismiss it. These pieces of early Americana are incredibly rare and wildly valuable. Next up, we're stepping into a forgotten era of American history, 1841 to 1845, during the presidency of John Tyler. Now, Tyler isn't a name you hear often in classrooms or textbooks, but what if I told you a coin tied to his time, one struck in in fact, it looks rough, scratched, dirty, like it's been tossed through 1,000 hands and left in the bottom of a junk drawer. But here's where things take a sharp turn, because this is a 1956D Lincoln Wheat Penny. And believe it or not, some of the ugliest coins from this year are worth more than a brand new car. Yes, even in bad condition. Let's break it down. In 1956, the Denver Mint cranked out over 1 billion Lincoln Wheat Pennies, one of the largest production runs in wheat cent history. So it sounds like this coin would be worthless, right? Wrong. Because during that mass production frenzy, errors happened. And some of those mistakes turned these common coins into numismatic legends. And one error in particular is so dramatic, so visible, that even people with no coin experience can spot it instantly. It's called the repunched mint mark, or RPM. And on some 1956 D cents, that little D under the date was punched twice. Sometimes the second punch was slightly off. Sometimes it was sideways. And sometimes, this is rare, the D looks like it's echoed, shadowed, or even overlapping. Now here's the kicker. That small error, on a dirty, worn-down coin like this, it can make the value explode. A low-grade 1956D with a clear RPM can go for $400 to $1,200, depending on the severity. But a more dramatic example, even in poor condition, like this one, has fetched up to $3,500 at auction. And if that same RPM shows up on a coin with additional issues, like die chips, misaligned dies, or doubling on the date, that pushes things into the $8,000 plus range. Yes, for a coin that looks like pocket change. Now let's talk about the emotional side for a moment. This coin was minted in a year when Elvis Presley was exploding onto the radio. Eisenhower was president. Gas was 20 cents a gallon. And this penny, it's been through it all. Who knows how many hands it's passed through, how many times it was dropped, lost, found again, never realizing that hidden within that worn copper shell was a small minting accident, one that turned this from worthless to wildly collectible. Now, the design, still classic. Lincoln on the front, wheat ears on the back. But the real treasure lies in the mint mark, that little D. And here's a quick test. Grab a magnifying glass. Hold the coin under a strong light. Look at the D. If it looks blurred, doubled, or like it has a faint outline around it, that might be a repunched mint mark. And that might mean you're holding a mini fortune. By the way, one pristine 1956D with a bold RPM graded by PCGS in MS66 red sold for over $24,000. Get this, most people had one of these in their pockets at some point in their lives. They spent it, lost it, never knew. But now, get ready for this, because the next coin we're looking at might seeded, and through all that chaos, a strange and rare coin was born. One tied to the most iconic president in U.S. history, Abraham Lincoln. Now, before you look away because it's in bad condition, hold on. This isn't about shiny surfaces or flawless mint luster. This one, it's battle-worn, corroded, scratched. You might even mistake it for a worthless trinket, but it's not even close. Because what you're looking at is believed to be one of the very first coins, or more accurately, Civil War-era tokens, to ever feature Lincoln's face. These weren't made by the U.S. Mint. During the war, there was a severe shortage of official coinage, so private businesses started producing their own, often with patriotic imagery. And in some rare cases, they featured the rising figure of Abraham Lincoln. This specific piece, dated somewhere between 1861 and 1864, is incredibly hard to find today, especially in any readable condition. And here's the kicker. These tokens were often made from copper, bronze, or brass, metals that corrode easily over time. Most were handled, pocketed, and eventually tossed aside as worthless junk. But collectors, they know better. Because even in bad condition, like this one, with half the details worn down and the edge chipped, it can still bring in $3,000 to $6,000 depending on the variation. Now let's talk about the rare stuff, the holy grails. A specific 1863 Lincoln Civil War token with a unique Emancipation Proclamation reverse and a double-die obverse surfaced at a Chicago coin show years ago. It looked like it had been dragged through the battlefield itself. And yet, after verification, that small, beat-up copper token sold for $141,000. But wait, it gets even crazier. In 2018, a gold-plated specimen, likely a prototype never meant for public hands, appeared at an estate auction. It had no official mint record. It was never supposed to exist. One of one. Experts called it the Lost Lincoln. And it sold, hold your breath, for $511,000. Now imagine that, a tiny battered Civil War era coin, half rusted, missing its shine, turning into a $500,000 prize. Why? Because it captures a moment in time. A nation split in two, a leader rising from the ashes, a coin that shouldn't have survived, and yet somehow did. That's the power of history. That's the power of rarity. And that's why even the ugliest coin can sometimes be the most valuable. So next time someone tells you condition is everything, show them this.
Next up, we're dialing the clock back even further, all the way to 1817 through 1825, deep into the early Republic, when
It seemed totally unremarkable until you find out how one simple mistake at the San Francisco Mint turned a 1954 Lincoln Wheat Penny, yes, even one in circulating condition, into a coin worth tens of thousands of dollars. It's easy to overlook. The surface is worn, the copper is dark, maybe even a little green in the corners. But don't blink, because this might be one of the most misunderstood coins in wheat penny history. Let's set the stage. It's 1954. The U.S. is post-war booming, and the San Francisco Mint, the S you see below the date, is nearing the end of its role in producing pennies. In fact, 1955 would be the last year the S mint mark appears on a wheat cent for over 2 decades. And in this final stretch, something went wrong. During the production of 1954 S cents, the Mint experienced a wave of quality control issues, including misaligned dies, off-center strikes, die cracks, and one of the most desirable errors for collectors, repunched mint marks, or RPMs. Now, here's where things get crazy. Some 1954 S pennies, struck by dies with heavy use or improper alignment, produced coins where the S mint mark was clearly punched twice, or, in extreme cases, 3 times. And even when the coin is circulated, worn, scratched, or even dirty, if that repunched mint mark is visible, that's a $1,000 to $3,500 coin. And that's just for basic RPMs. Now, brace yourself, because it gets more shocking. A small number of these 1954 S errors also display something called a BIE error, a raised line between the B and E in Liberty, caused by a die chip. That little chip, it's tiny, but collectors love it. If your 1954 S has a bold RPM and a BIE error, even in circulated condition, that's a $5,000 to $8,000 coin. And the rarest of them all? There are confirmed cases of 1954 S wheat pennies struck on the wrong planchet, like leftover silver dime blanks or foreign coin planchets. These are ultra-rare mint errors, and at least one known example sold for over $120,000. Let me say that again. A Lincoln penny struck on the wrong metal sold for 6 figures. Now think about the odds. A coin like that could easily sit in a jar for decades, completely unnoticed, because to the untrained eye, it just looks like a beat-up old penny. But in the coin world, that's gold. And the emotional part is this. Most of these coins were never meant to exist. They were accidents, flukes, missteps in the minting process that snuck through and landed in everyday people's pockets. Next up, we're going back, way back. This worn-out coin in your hand? Dollar coin to honor a woman who changed history, Sacagawea. But in that same year, something happened, something the mint never intended. And it created one of the most shocking coin blunders in American history. This one, it's a 2000p Sacagawea dollar, and yes, it's in circulated condition. Scuffs, nicks, a bit of dirt worn into the creases of Sacagawea's portrait. You've probably handled one before, or at least thought you did. But here's the twist. Most people have no idea that in 2000, A catastrophic mistake at the Philadelphia Mint turned a small batch of coins into six-figure rarities. And to the legend, the 2000p Sacagawea Cheerios dollar. You see, before the official release of the new golden dollar, the U.S. Mint struck a limited number of Sacagawea coins with an enhanced eagle tail design, far more detailed than the final version. These prototype coins were quietly slipped into boxes of Cheerios cereal as a promotional stunt. Yes, Cheerios, a breakfast cereal giveaway, accidentally birthed one of the most valuable modern coins in American history. Now, the circulated one you're seeing here may or may not be one of those Cheerios strikes. The only way to know is to look closely, very closely, at the tail feathers of the eagle on the reverse. If it's the enhanced high detail version, even in worn circulated condition, you're looking at a $5,000 to $8,000 coin. But hold on. It gets way crazier. An uncirculated mint condition Cheerios dollar, that's a $40,000 to $75,000 coin today. And here's the bombshell. A pristine Cheerios dollar, still in its original plastic sleeve from the cereal box, with full provenance and authentication, sold for an eye-watering $144,000 at auction in 2020. But it doesn't stop there. There's an even rarer error that slipped through that same year, something no one noticed until years later. A small number of Sacagawea dollars were accidentally struck using state quarter planchets, the metal discs meant for quarters, not dollar coins. These came out visibly smaller, lighter, and had a color mismatch. Only a few are confirmed to exist. And when one was authenticated by PCGS in 2016, it sold for a staggering $223,000. That's right. A modern coin from the year 2000, found in cereal boxes and pocket change, now fetching well into six figures. And here's what's terrifying for collectors. Many people spent these coins without ever knowing what they had, because they didn't look different, unless you really knew.
Finally, we return to the very beginning of it all, once again between 1789 and 1797. But this time, it's a 1942 Lincoln Wheat Penny. And yeah, it looks rough. It's seen better days. The edges are dull, the lettering is faint, and it feels like just another old penny from your change jar. But what if I told you, even in bad condition, this could be one of the most valuable mistakes the U.S. Mint ever made? Let's rewind to 1942. World War II was raging, America was preparing to join the fight, and at the Philadelphia Mint, something strange was happening. Copper was in high demand, not just for pennies, but for bullets, electrical wiring, military supplies. The Mint began experimenting with different metal combinations, trying to stretch the copper supply. And that's where this gets wild. Some 1942 Lincoln cents were struck on the wrong planchet. You heard that right. Instead of the standard copper alloy, 95% copper, 5% tin and zinc, some coins were accidentally struck on leftover foreign coin blanks. Some were struck on brass, others on blanks meant for silver-colored coins, like dimes. And those mistakes, they weren't supposed to happen, but they did. Now here's the punchline. If your 1942 penny has a silvery tint to it, even just under the surface, and it's not magnetic, that could mean it's struck on a dime planchet. And the value? Even in terrible condition, that's a $30,000 to $50,000 coin. And that's not even the rarest version. One specific 1942 error penny, struck on a Peruvian 1 centavo planchet, sold for $78,000 at auction. Let that sink in. A penny. Beat up, dark, forgotten in a drawer for decades, worth more than most people's cars. But even the standard copper 1942 wheat penny can surprise you, because some of them show dramatic die breaks, off-center strikes, and one of the rarest errors of the decade, a doubled die obverse, where Lincoln's profile and the word liberty appear faintly but clearly doubled. Even in circulated shape, if that doubling is strong, we're talking $5,000 to $8,000. And here's the kicker. Most people never look close enough to notice. Think about it.
How many of these coins were tossed in jars, piggy banks, glove compartments over the years? Tens of millions, but only a handful of the error versions survived. Now look closer at this worn-out penny. Yes, it's damaged, but is the rim a little thinner than normal? Does it feel lighter? Looks silvery underneath the grime. Is there doubling on the lettering? These are all clues. Even if it's ugly, it could still be shockingly valuable. This coin was minted in a moment of history. Roosevelt was president. The country was preparing for war. And in the middle of all that pressure, the mint made a mistake. One that could now be worth tens of thousands of dollars. Up next, we're heading into one of the rarest pennies ever minted on U.S.
Now we're diving even deeper into history. This next coin is nearly a century old. It's faded, the details are soft. It looks like something you'd find stuck between